Makino Inc. Hazard Communication Employee Training Program. Hazard Communications, the 4 stages of the program. First, chemical classifications. Next, labeling and marking systems, employee training, and safety data sheets, SDS. Chemical classifications. Chemicals are classified using a harmonized system that provides standardized language for health hazard categories, physical hazard categories, and environmental hazard categories. Chemical classifications, health hazards. These include acute toxicity, skin corrosion/irritation, respiratory and skin sensitization, germ and cell mutagen, carcinogen, reproductive toxicity, specific target organ toxicity, single exposure, specific target organ toxicity, repeated exposure, aspiration, and simple asphyxiants. Chemical classifications, physical hazards. These include explosions, flammable aerosols, oxidizing gases, gases under pressure, including compressed gases, liquefied gases, refrigerated liquefied gases, and dissolved gases. Chemical classifications, physical hazards continued. These include flammable liquids, flammable solids, self-reactive chemicals, pyrophoric liquids, pyrophoric solid, pyrophoric gases, self-heating chemicals, chemicals which in contact with water emit flammable gases. Chemical classifications, physical hazards continued. More examples: oxidizing liquids, oxidizing solid, organic peroxide, corrosive to metals, and combustible dust. Hazard communications, labeling and marking systems. There are 2 types. The first is the National Fire Protection Association NFPA Diamond, and the second is the Hazardous Materials Identification System HMIS labels. Labeling and marketing systems, NFPA diamonds. Their color-coded numerical rating system are located on hazardous chemical containers and provide at-a-glance hazard information. Labeling and marketing systems, NFPA diamonds continued. They have a color for blue for health, red for flammability, yellow for instability, and white for special information. And so here, blue, health, red, flammability, yellow, instability, and white, special information. Labeling and marketing systems, NFPA diamonds. Here we have 4 equals a deadly hazard, 3 a severe hazard, 2 moderate hazard, 1 slight hazard, and 0 no hazard. Labeling marketing systems, the HMIS labels. These labels are designed to go on individual containers of products that don't have manufactured labels. They're the same color code, numerical rating system as the NFPA diamonds. Labeling and marketing systems, HMIS labels. So again, here we have blue for health, red for flammability, yellow for instability. White is a little different. It's for personal protective equipment or special protection information, and a numerical rating of 1 or 0 through 4. Labeling and marketing systems, HMIS labels. So we have the same system as the NFPA. 4 equals severe hazard, 3 serious hazard, 2 moderate hazard, 1 slight hazard, and 0 minimal hazard. So we have here a 3 for the blue, which would be a serious health hazard. Labeling and marketing systems, HMIS labels. You should never have an unlabeled container in your workplace. And again, here we have flammability of 3, and then another label which has the pictograms, which we'll discuss in a couple upcoming slides, and then a secondary container labeled here. Hazard communications, employee training. Training is required within the first 30 days of employment, whenever new hazards are introduced, and annually. This is when training is required under the standard. Hazardous communications employee training. The training must cover requirements of regulations, location and availability of safety data sheets, hazardous chemicals used in the workplace, method to detect release, physical and health hazards, measure of personal protective equipment, details and location of the written plan. Global harmonization. Labels are more defined and now require product identifier, a pictogram, harmonized signal word, hazard statement or statements, precautionary statement or statements, the name, address, and telephone number. Labels. There are several label elements. Symbols called pictograms, which are here. Signal words, which is here, danger. Hazardous statement, here. And it covers this under here. Precautionary statement, which is all the information below here. Product identification, which would be up here. Supplier manufacturer identification, and that would be located, which is not on this, actually right here, all of this information. Labels, pictograms. There are 9 pictograms. Only 8 are regulated by OSHA. Health hazards, physical hazards, and then environmental hazards, which those are regulated by the Department of Environmental Protection. These are the different examples down here of all the pictograms, which we'll be discussing. Label pictograms, health hazards. So we have one for acute toxicity, severe. This is the label here. We have one for acute toxicity, less severe, an irritant, dermal sensitizer, acute toxicity, harmful, narcotic effects, and respiratory tract irritations. That's the symbol for all of those, this right here. Labels, pictograms, health hazards. Continued. We have a label for skin corrosion, serious eye damage, and eye irritation. That's this label. There's a label for carcinogen, respiratory sensitizer, reproductive toxicity, target organ toxicity, mutagen, and aspiration hazard. That's this right here. Labels, pictograms, physical hazards. So we have a pictogram for explosives, self-reactive, and organic peroxides. Whenever you see that on a container, these cover these elements. We have a pictogram for flammables, self-reactive, pyrophoric, self-heating, emits flammable gas, and organic peroxide, this label here. Pictograms, physical hazards continued. Corrosive metals, this one here, that's the pictogram for corrosive metals. Gases under pressure, this pictogram, and oxidizer is this pictogram. Labels, signal words. We identified that on the previous slide. These are words used to indicate the severity of the hazard and alert employees to the potential hazard. Only two signal words will appear. It's either danger, more severe hazard, or warning, less severe hazard. And those will all appear, which the label that we identified a couple previous slides had danger. Not all labels will have a signal word. Some chemicals are not hazardous enough to require that a signal word appear on the label. Labels hazardous statement. There are specific hazard statements that must appear on labels based on the chemical classification. The examples are flammable liquid and vapor, causes skin irritation, may cause cancer. Precautionary statement for the label. Precautionary statements describe recommended measures that should be taken to protect against hazardous exposures or improper storage or handling of a chemical. These examples include wear respiratory protection, wash with soap and water, store in well-ventilated place. Not necessarily a mandate for employees to follow these precautionary statements. Label identification. The label must have a product identification, i.e. the name of the product. Supplier identification, the address, and the telephone number. And this here shows improper label. Can't use that. Label other information. Other information that may be included on a label consists of physical state, color, hazards not otherwise classified, route of exposure, storage and disposal, hazard prevention and emergency response instructions. Sample label. And we'll go through this. Can you identify each label component? So here identifies all the different types of labels that we may have. So we have the pictogram labels here, either side. So we have a severe, flammable, and acute toxicity. Severe. The signal word here is danger. Product identifier. This is the name of the company. And then the hazard statement, which is over here. Toxic if swallowed, flammable vapors, supplementary information, supplied identification, precautionary statement, if swallowed, immediately call poison control, or doctor or physician, rinse mouth. In case of fire, use water, fog, dry chemical, CO2, or alcohol foam. So this label identifies all the information you'll need for the product that you're using and the different hazards that are associated or may occur. Safety data sheets. Safety data sheets, SDS. All safety data sheets have a consistent 16-section format. Employers must ensure that safety data sheets are readily accessible to employees. So the 16 sections, they're all identical. Every chemical will have a 16-section format, hazardous chemical, that requires a safety data sheet. Safety data sheets continued. Section 1 covers identification. This includes product identifier, the manufacturer or distributor name, address, phone number, emergency phone number, recommended use, and restrictions on use. Section 2 covers hazards identification. This includes all hazards regarding the chemical, required label elements. Section 3, composition/information on ingredients. It includes information on chemical ingredients, trade secret claims. Section 4 covers first aid measures, includes important symptoms, effects, acute, delayed, required treatment. Section 5 covers firefighting measures, lists suitable extinguishing techniques, equipment, chemical hazards from fire. Safety data sheets continued. Section 6 covers accidental release measures, lists emergency procedures, protective equipment, proper methods of containment and cleanup. Section 7 covers handling and storage, lists precautions for safe handling and storage, including incompatibilities. Section 8, this covers exposure controls / personal protective, lists OSHA's permissible exposure limits, threshold limit values, appropriate engineering controls, and personal protective equipment. Section 9 covers physical and chemical properties, lists the chemicals' characteristics. Safety data sheets continued. Section 10 covers stability and reactivity, lists chemical stability and the possible of hazardous reactions. Section 11, toxicological information, includes routes of exposure, related symptoms, acute and chronic effects, and numerical measures of toxicity. Section 12, ecological information. They're not regulated by OSHA. Section 13, disposable consideration. These are also not covered by OSHA. Section 14, transportation information, not covered by OSHA. Section 15, regulatory information, not covered by OSHA. Section 16, other information, including date of preparation of last revision. Sections outside OSHA's jurisdiction, but these sections must be included for GSH compliant safety data sheets. So that covers section 12 through 15. Safety data sheets. A chemical inventory list or table of contents is required within the safety data book or file. So you should have table of contents or chemical inventory lists so you can go to the front of the booklet, and if you're searching for a chemical, know where it is within the booklet. Safety data sheets. Continued. They must have a safety data sheet for every substance you use as a part of your job. These safety data sheets must be available the entire time an employee is in the workplace. Employees must be notified of the safety data sheet location, so the folder or binder, or if it's online, they have to be notified where it's at and have access to this. If you have a question on any chemical that you're working with, the safety data sheet will provide the information, also provide first aid information, firefighting, disposal, as we went through. This ends the presentation portion of the training. There will be a 10-question quiz that follows. Question 1. Chemical classifications include A, health hazard categories, B, physical hazard categories, C, environmental hazard categories, or D, all the above. Question 2. Acute toxicity, skin corrosion / irritation, or respiratory or skin sensitization are examples of blank. A, health hazard, B, physical hazard, C, environmental hazard, or D, biological hazard. Question 3. Explosives, flammable aerosols, oxidizing gases, and gases under pressure are examples of blank. A, health hazard, B, physical hazard, C, environmental hazard, or D, biological hazard. Question 4. Red represents flammability under the Hazardous Materials Identification System HMIS labels. That is A, true, or B, false. Question 5. Blue represents personal protective equipment under the Hazardous Materials Identification System HMIS labels. That is A, true, or B, false. Question 6. Under the Hazardous Materials Identification System, HMIS labels, a severe hazard is identified by the number A4, B3, C2, or D1. Question 7. A chemical inventory list or table of contents is required within the safety data sheet book or file. That is A, true, or B, false. Question 8. Hazard communication employee training is required A, within the first 30 days of employment, B, whenever new hazards are introduced, C, annually, or D, all the above. Question 9. There are blank number of pictograms. A8, B6, C9, or D2. And the final question 10, all safety data sheets have a consistent blank section format. A8, B16, C9, or D13. This ends the quiz portion of the training.